Hey everyone, it's Stingray. I'm out here in San Antonio and it is still raining outside, so I've got some big cantaloupes growing, a ton of tomatoes, and some peppers and all kinds of good stuff growing in my garden. And all of those things are enjoyed by ourselves and also by the critters that come into the backyard. So I feel like I'm doing a little bit of justice for wildlife just by having planted these things in advance, and now we're getting all this rain, so we have plenty of blessings here to go around. And it got me to thinking about certain things, about sharing those blessings. For an example, I oftentimes try to share those things that I produce with the people who I enjoy spending time with, and even with people I don't enjoy spending time with. I I really have to say that pretty much everyone enjoys spending time together. There are always some kind of common talking points that you can come to in order to bridge a conversation. You know, not everything has to be divided by any kind of imagery or ideology, or let's just go with imagery and ideology. The fact is, there are a lot of us who think that we're apart from some of the practices that are told to us, or that we're aware of, and that we think we're a part of. For an example, today I was watching a clip on YouTube and it's called Narcissists Tell on Themselves, You Just Have to Listen. This is true. And in quite a remarkable way, I can say it takes one to know one. We all have tendencies of narcissism, and we all either temper those feelings or we run with them. And the easy way to tell the difference is if someone is able to produce a real work that's their own and give it to you without any kind of fear. One time I used to know someone and I went to a get together with them. And at this get together, they brought some cupcakes to the get together and falsely represented themselves as having made those cupcakes. I one time had talked with someone who saw an accident happen and didn't report the accident. It was basically something that would have taken time out of their day. I one time basically was able to see that I had a different brand of shoes on than someone else had. And I looked at their shoes like as if, they were somehow a different value than the shoes that I had on. So if you understand what I'm saying, you'll understand that basically we can look and look and look around all day long. But when we fail to look at ourselves as the possible culprit in the instance of any situation of narcissism, we run the risk of becoming a narcissist ourselves, because we suddenly can shortcut someone else's insight based on how we view them. So with all that being said, this particular video reminded me in another instance that I was seeing something where they were talking about narcissists always liking to play victim. And this is true. And in other instances, there are true victims who may only come across as narcissistic because they're quote unquote playing victim when they're actually being victimized. So it took a while to recognize all these things because, as a young adult male with great health, I've oftentimes been kind of looked down upon in terms of, well, what have you had to go through? Because I've had the great fortune of working really hard to get to different levels of employment that I had achieved. And all of those things were done on my merit. I didn't try to springboard off of someone else's merit, although I can say with certainty that I couldn't have gotten to the places I got to without the assistance of other people. So even for an example, my highest paying jobs in the IT career were oftentimes represented by another person who got me in the door to get that interview. And so I returned the favor. I did the same thing for everyone that I knew had an interest in those levels of achievement, and I did my best to get them those interviews. Now, In this more recent time frame, when I've been asking for help, especially with help disconnecting from superfluous work that I myself don't need to manage directly, I've been contacted over and over and over about work that really is not my place to be putting in the work for. For an example, let's just say, staying with the theme of our fathers, let's just say that one of us in the group has a father who maybe somehow accidentally or on purpose burned down the house and needed a new place to live. And let's say that they wanted to obtain a place at this facility that had one vacancy, and for some reason they wanted you to do the work. They wanted you to call in and start doing the legwork for obtaining this place that they themselves have to take responsibility for. Is that a narcissistic trait, or are they asking you for assistance? Well, it kind of depends. It depends on if the person needs assistance taking care of that kind of opportunity or conversation. However you divide it up, the fact is nobody should divide the baby to try and satisfy the two people who are claiming it's their baby. And I guess what I'm trying to relate that to is narcissism, and say it takes one to know one. We all can see narcissistic traits in one another, and we all can see when people are being victimized and taken advantage of, and when people are just frankly not doing the work that is applicable for the things that they themselves are able to become steward of. So right before this video, I was watching something on how demonism is introduced in a lot of our television shows. And it was specifically talking about people dressing up in dresses, men particularly dressing up in dresses, and how it was part of the role that they would be subjected to. And these are all possibly things that are set up to twist the experience of the viewer to normalize the certain things that we normally wouldn't obviously pay attention to. And in that same manner, sometimes we don't have the complete picture of a person when we don't normalize the actual pain and hardships that people go through. It isn't all just Law and Order, homicide on television type things. There's also the backstabbing that happens after the crime, where people try to take over the will and try to figure out, well, how does this get divided up so that it can apply to me? And when you think like that, when someone thinks like that, that's narcissism. So if there are people out there who are dividing up the property of a place that once belonged to a relative of mine who may or may not have set a fire, there are basically some traits of narcissism that can be exposed over and over. And it's not that my attention to this is incorrect. And since it's not incorrect, it shouldn't be making the participants angry. It's more along the lines of the fact that what I'm saying is accurate. And some of us are being entertained to death, whether it's spiritual death or otherwise. Some of us are being entertained to death to not particularly pay attention to the things over your shoulder, the ones that are speaking in your ear. And they're not quite seeing the whole picture and understanding the story of why it takes one to know one is such a great concept to always keep in mind. And why recognizing that we're seeing one another right now. You're seeing me, but I'm seeing you. I mean, I see you in your statistics. I see who is watching these videos. I look at the statistics. And it's a pretty interesting demographic as far as who's watching this video. But what's more concerning to me is that a lot of this isn't being shared the way that it should be shared, because these talks are very straightforward. You know, some people might name a certain type of spirituality or a certain type of following or a certain type of gift or what have you, and never ever give consideration that you really have to look at the full story and be able to look at the full story in peace. There were teachers of peace throughout time. Some of them were literally nailed for crimes that they did not commit, for just bringing peacefulness to a situation. And that was basically in the face of the same era when murderers were literally being set free to do whatever they wanted. Murderers, arsonists, rapists, people were being set free to walk about and to do things in the community with or without the participation of other people in the community to try and alleviate these narcissistic tendencies to overlook some of the times when we could have been helping other people who are directly in front of us. And I don't mean on a screen. I've named a number of ways to receive assistance in the threads that I've posted here. All you have to do is click on the description, read along, and understand that I'm trying to do the most I can with the limited amount of time I have. And I've done that as best as I can using words that are, I think, pretty straightforward. And I've talked about topics that are just outside the grasp of some who might want to judge a topic just because they heard a certain word or they can't answer a certain question. As far as, well, what does it mean when someone's talking about peace and there's a meme that was shown that showed 3 different representatives of spirituality, and all 3 of them were being discussed. What is it that your specific belief, again, remember, it takes one to see one. Your absolutely specific belief that's so certain, and I'm not saying it's wrong, and even in the texts that I'm referencing, there is a peaceful man that says, well, if they're not against us, then surely they're for us. That's basically what's being taught when peace is being taught. And peace is the way. The examples have been sent, and the letters have been put in the mail to describe why some things are peaceful and some things are not. Whoever's dividing up the baby and not putting it back together, well, that's kind of on you and your justice system. In my justice system, I will have the ability to defend my own baby for as long as I'm able to be recognized as the father of that baby. So in this particular case today, I wanted to share an idea with you, my baby. And this idea is that we can communicate in ways that allow us to see past narcissists. And the biggest way to do that, of course, is to sometimes submit to stroke the ego. And when you stroke the ego of a narcissist, they love that. That's great. So does anybody who does not have a big ego. And with all that being said, it's appreciated to hear a genuine comment is what I mean. And when you hear a genuine comment, a genuine compliment, I should say, when you hear a genuine compliment, what does that do for you? Does it put a smile on your face? How does it make you feel? And when you hear a genuine lack of stewardship over something by someone who wants you to maintain that thing that they're supposed to be the steward of, how does that make you feel? It's the same concept. The ego feels, hears, speaks, all of those things the same way. The same way as you understand something is the same way that I understand something. Comfort is comfort, excess is excess, peace is peace, love is love. And also hostility, agitation, and all of those things are all the same thing to each of us. And to varying degrees, we either feel peace or we feel anxiety. As we continue to feel anxiety, I'm going to tell you the number one thing that narcissists hate is when someone says something that they learned is correct and they themselves weren't able to take credit for that. So if I tell you eating less meat is absolutely great for all of us, for all of our health, that's the number one thing to do to improve your health. It's the number one thing that I've done that's improved my health. Well, it's a true statement. And I also tell you, I didn't get that information on my own. I had to learn that from someone else. I was not taught this information by our fathers. When I use the phrase, our fathers, and people turn away from it, thinking that we're talking about religion here, that's narcissism. I'm talking about literally about our fathers, and I'm talking specifically to my viewing audience who knows which 2 fathers I'm talking about. I have in my family 2 adult male relatives who should be my examples of inspiration for communication, for love, for nurturing. And for whatever reason, they haven't shown me those particular attributes on a regular basis. And even when I reached out as a non anger inducing stranger at this point, just as a relative who said, hey, I have the same concerns as you, I wasn't able to communicate with one of our fathers. So I've written a lot of music. You see art and inspiration around me that basically tells a story. I work in the shadows, I guess, like Batman. I work among the sick and impaired like Jesus, I guess. And I do my work without hesitation. I don't fear it. I'm not afraid of it. I can see it. I can accept my own shortcomings. And I absolutely appreciate it when I get compliments, comments, feedback. It doesn't even have to be compliments. When I get feedback that tells me, hey, I was watching this and I didn't like this so much. That word really it stuck with me. I appreciate that information. I understand that I'm using words that are very complex and challenging. And I'm not trying to put us on a timeout. I don't know whether or not there's a timeout after this shell of a life. I'm not going to claim to be the absolute knowledge source of that. I can't. I'm not. All I can say is peace is peace. Narcissism, it does exist. Victims and people who play victims do exist. Learn to differentiate between the two. Learn that there are victims and there are also people who continue to carry out the victimization of people who were once victims. And the only difference is whether someone has the self-respect to stop being victimized or not. Once you have self-respect, there'll be a lot of people who call you a narcissist and who try to turn anything you've ever done against you, and who will also avoid you like the plague, even if there's a plague going around that's basically smiting the people who are the most fearful, who are the most agitated, who are the illest of the ill. That reminds me of something I was watching earlier today too, spelling and how we say things. It's subtle when we call something ill and try to make it sound like it's good. Call something cool, well, at least it's not calling it, that's dead, man, or that's dope, or that's, whatever. There are a lot of words that can be used. Whether you're offended by one word or another, doesn't matter. You still have something to learn. I also have things to learn. I say things, I catch myself on these very videos saying things that I'm learning from right then. We can learn things immediately and carry those forward into our daily lives, unlike some of our fathers who only say the words and don't carry forward any actions. It's like faith is great no matter what you believe in, but don't forget about the action part. Action is important. And when they yell action, don't forget to stay true to yourself. If you didn't want to wear a dress, don't wear a dress. If it made you uncomfortable, then don't participate, I guess. At the same time, though, the discomfort that you're feeling, if you feel it because you didn't talk, well, that discomfort's going to stay there until the next opportunity you have to use your voice. So until you're ready to use your voice, I guess basically there are narcissists and then there are people that are accused of being narcissists. I myself have probably been both. What do you see me as right now? Am I a narcissist or am I just telling a story? Am I the victim? Am I being victimized? Have I been victimized in the past? Some of these things you may or may not know because you may or may not know me personally. But if you look far enough back in the video history, you'll see that recently in my own family, I experienced a devastating situation. And it wasn't just that it was happening right then. I described it formerly prior to that point in time. And if you listen to all the songs that I've put together, for you, my specific amazing viewership, who understands what I'm talking about and is learning with me right now, what I'm asking is for you to help me change my tune. And the way that I can do that is with those comments that help me to know, hey, Ray, you used a really powerful word there. That word wasn't something that I would have used. Hey, the way that you presented this, it was a little bit cutting edge. Maybe I wouldn't have done it that way. Let's at least have the discussion before we decide to throw the baby out, divided or not. Let's just decide to have the discussion to begin with as to whether or not it was necessary for someone to dress up in a certain way in order to get your attention. I mean, isn't that what we've been sold? The imagery? It's all there. And it's all there in so many different layers that it even impacts our very shopping tendencies. Did you see how I changed that? I was going to call it something else. There was probably another word that popped into your mind. It even impacts our own shopping tendencies. Well, now it sounds like something that we can look at. A tendency means it's something we might tend to do more often than another thing. But that leaves room for improvement. So I've got a lot of tendencies. I've got a tendency to talk on for another 10 minutes when I say thank you so much for listening. Have a great day. Thanks for subscribing. Thanks for sharing. Thanks for understanding. Today is day, 11 or 12 of not having had meat. And I haven't gone 100% vegan yet. But I'm telling you that I'm going through these phases again and again so that you can see and you can backtrack and you look back at when I had very little confidence when I was telling you, hey guys, this thing works. This thing really works. I'm less angry. I'm not even worried that someone stole my stuff. I know I'm going to get it back. When you let go and let what's going to happen, justice is rendered. The biggest question is, are we leveraging hurt on one another, harm on one another, lies on one another, slander on one another? How are we burying someone as we're basically burying our own selves in those same graves? Is it with some kind of cement capper? Or is it with a seedling, a new tree that's going to use you as the nutrients reintroduced to the system? The way that we used to practice tending to the things that we have available to us to tend to, that was the old way. We've already said the world can't go back to what it was. That was the old way. What's the new way? Are you going to see yourself into that next segment of what happens? Or are you going to bow out, masked, even without a mask, where you can't even talk because you don't know what to say, you don't know what's right? What's going to be right in the eyes of our fathers? What about our Father? What about the main source, energy that we are all connected to, learning from, growing with? If there's a dying vine, why do what can you do? If you've got enough vine that you're working on already, what are you supposed to do when someone else is not tending to their garden? We can pick up the slack so much. But what if the entirety of society has gotten to a point where we're all, the majority of us, sick? How do we get better? 7-day vegan challenge. How do we get better? How do we look at one another and go, hey, I'm judging. Every time I'm judging, I'm making myself feel ill. Every time someone else treats me this terrible way, they're making me feel ill. Every time someone doesn't help out when they have been asked to help, they're making me feel ill. How do I get away from that? You got to guard your energy. Your energy, your health is your wealth. And believe it or not, people will steal from you whether or not there's a contractual obligation that's evolved around it enough for you to see. People will steal your time from you. I've heard it said that when people pay, they pay attention. So, I don't necessarily need your validation. I myself have made poor choices in the past, and I also made some risky moves. And in trying to fund my business, I invested in many instruments of mass instruction so that I could tell a story with my only friend. Sometimes I feel like I only have one friend. Do you even know who I'm talking about at these times when I say things like that? Some people ask me to start out, whenever you feel troubled, turn to this, that, or the other spirituality. Isn't that kind of what we're talking about right now? I'm not turning to it, I'm immersing us in it, which is why some of us get a little bit scared about the fact that it's like, well, you're talking about health. You're supposed to be talking about food. You're supposed to be talking about music. You're supposed to be talking about nature. All of it ties back in a way to where I'm saying, I've been talking about wildlife and nature for a long time, and I noticed some discrepancies in wildlife. I'm not pointing myself out as a victim. I'm saying wildlife is being victimized. I've noticed some anomalies in our families where some people can't help but continue destructive behaviors when they have not accepted responsibility. And I'm not pointing myself out as a victim, even though I've been victimized in the past by these type of situations by our fathers. What I'm saying is, as a messenger who is observing and pointing out these discrepancies, I will tell you there's a higher source power. That higher source power moves your tongue when you allow yourself to be a channel of that insight. Can't the same be said of the other side? Which side is fed and which side is more strong? The ego side or the spirit side? The ego side says, man, I'm going to get me a double so-and-so sandwich type fad name, And it's going to be made out of all of the different meats possible. That's what side feeds the side that's responsive to destructive behavior. What I mean is, if that choice doesn't ever once consider, what is the condition of the world right now? What is the condition of my own home right now? Are things in disarray? Can we use less to bring things to order quicker? Is there a house that needs to be rebuilt? How does something like that happen without all the money in the world, or at least just a little bit of it, whether or not someone's worn a dress for that action part, for that action superhero, action superhero part? How do we ever get past the roles of identity as something that also is being judged frequently? How do we get past that stuff? So I've tried to write songs about it, and I think that I've done a relatively good job. I just needed to put some smiles into it. So I appreciate your continued feedback, talking about how these communications, what's the word for it? It's not just communication, how the comprehension segments are going. I appreciate all of that because it helps me to communicate better in terms of what we're trying to achieve together. Remember, this is pretty much a half-hour segment. For this half hour, if you were listening the whole time and you weren't multitasking, then That's a half hour that you kept from burning the house down. That's already a start for some people. I know that because I've faced a lot of adversity where I've felt very destructive behavior. I get the negative thoughts. They come in. Sometimes there is an animal next to me that I can't help but have these negative thoughts about. And those negative thoughts come from negative energy currents that we subscribe to or that we can swat off, shield ourselves from. The more you follow the teachings of peace, the more open you are to figuring out, hey, I can hear this message from anybody. It didn't have to be Jesus Christ himself. It didn't have to be Buddha. It didn't have to be some kind of atheist. It didn't have to be a sorcerer. It didn't have to be someone who practices witchcraft. It didn't have to be just my elder who I respect. It could also be the youth. It could also be a child innocently telling you their opinion before we help them form a different opinion. It could be that we listen to things that we hadn't listened to before, like the sound of wildlife in our neck of the woods. Does it sound really loud where you're at? Or only in your backyard in the residential areas where you have watering requirements for the homeowners association? How does it sound where you're at when you actually go to the woods? Do you ever encounter silence? Do you meditate out there or pray? Some people get mad at the word meditation. It's a really interesting word to get mad at. I've heard of people getting really upset at words like purgatory or at images like seeing a picture of a snake or even maybe this form of a woman over my shoulder, over my left shoulder. Some people get very upset at imagery. Some people might get upset at the very fact that I play guitar and say that I sing songs because everyone knows that I can't really have sung in the past if I wasn't really super happy. And you can hear that in my voice. So some people might get offended that I said I've sung songs. Again, we can get offended all day long. And I can say without a doubt that my observations are not untrue. That doesn't make you untrue to your observations either. We both might be entirely right. The key to avoiding narcissistic tendencies is to be able to hear something without coming up with an answer that you want to give. Narcissistic tendencies have a running voice line in our head where, like this person that I was watching was presenting, if someone was asked something about an encounter with a person that they didn't want to divulge the encounter about, like let's say someone was developing a relationship with someone that they shouldn't have been, let's say that that person didn't want to reveal that, and someone asks them, hey, where did you hear about this topic? They might name the person with whom they were discussing things or having that whatever relationship they were developing. They might mention the name, but they might not stop there. They might tell you something like, and also I wasn't there at that place on Monday. I didn't go by the house on Monday. They might say something that's just so innocuous, and it didn't even have anything to do with the subject material at hand. They might say, who committed someone to this? You know, they might say something that just, it doesn't make sense. It's out of context. It's like they're shifting the subject using the very words of the actions that they're committing to deceive somebody from accomplishing what they're supposed to accomplish. And that's a good thing. When the narcissist gives clues like that, what they do is allow the former victims who have been picking up on this energy and frequency and who are able to see past everything, almost like when they put the glasses on and they live. Have you seen that movie? Once you're able to see through the lies, you're able to hear the little clues that allow you to move forward in the most mysterious of ways to where you can cover so many bases without very much effort, because you're not here to work to accomplish that task of bringing peace and fun and joy and love to one another. You're not here to struggle for that. You're here to be blessed with the bounty and abundance of energy that love is allowed to have to shine through in this eternal universe right now, even in this very broadcast that you're watching. So I hope you enjoyed this segment. You probably could see me going even younger in this video. The more I was talking, the more young I got. And I wanted to tell you today it is 1:32 p.m. and I've had 4 tomatoes from the garden. And that also some cantaloupe. One of the small cantaloupes that grew, it was still a little bit green. It looked like a honeydew, but it tasted amazing. And I have a giant cantaloupe that's still growing on the vine and about 4 more that are coming after that. So I've got a lot of things going on. I've got 2 guitars that I'm working on to complete right now. I have been putting some old lyrics to a new song, and I've also been putting new lyrics to old tunes. So I've been kind of mixing it up, having a good time, and I feel like a lot of things are coming together in ways that I could not have written a better story for if I was writing the story myself. So as I've said before, I've let go, and I'm just letting the current take us to where we're supposed to be. And I'm trying to be where I'm at, where I'm supposed to be at any given point in time, helping where I can help, providing insight where insight is asked of me, and helping to move the pieces along. If you have pieces that you can move along and I've provided that insight to you, move your pieces along. Maybe you doing that will unlock something for me that I can unlock something for you, and over and over again. That's how the energy part works in this universe. So even though certain things are fizzling out, there are other things that are smoldering. You know what I'm talking about, right? You know what I'm talking about. I hope you know that I have emotion just like everyone else. And as a stoic, sometimes I think that I'm viewed as a narcissist because I'm telling you what's going on in my life. These are the things I'm being faced with. These are the challenges. I'm not a victim. I'm moving along in the current that I'm working with right now. I'm doing everything I can to swim strongly. And along the way, I guess we pick each other up. You know, someone inspires me, I inspire someone else, and vice versa. But until there's someone over the shoulder telling you to do something bad, until you take time to observe and listen calmly to everything, you may not have time to understand there's someone over the other shoulder telling you to do something good. It's just that the voice might be quieter because what we feed might be a little louder than the alternative. So food is absolutely important for narcissists to at least obliterate those tendencies that were self-destructive in the past. If you can go with a 7-day vegan challenge, the narcissistic tendencies will also go away from that. All of the energy that we consume, whether it's the videos we're watching right now or the food that we eat, you know, all of it, all of the energy, the water that we ingest, we can talk to the water before we drink it. Did you know that we're over 75% water in some cases? I say in some cases because I don't know if every single aspect of us is over 75% water, like bone, brain, teeth, cartilage, blood cells, you know, tissue. I really don't know. What I do know is that an amazing component of each of us is water. The way we believe in and treat our water is the way ourselves will treat ourselves. If you don't think that's important and you're still hating on someone for something that they've said, even if it's true, then you might be challenging your own cellular regeneration using the very molecules that we know should benefit those who are beneficial to others. We know it. The ones that aren't beneficial, use it or lose it. Did you hear that? Confirmation. Anyway, I'm looking out. The rain is still falling. I'm so looking forward to all these cantaloupes that I'm going to get to experience from my own garden. First, I'm going to have a little bit of work to do for others. I'm getting paid for it this time. When people pay, they pay attention. So hopefully we're on a journey together where we're helping one another to recognize that a meme sometimes doesn't capture anything at all. And a song, if you can't hear the entire song, all the words to a song, you're not hearing the whole story. If you're only seeing snippets of one another, if you're too busy to hear your grandchildren sing songs, to hear your nephews sing songs, if you're too busy to share those things that make you smile or make you think and go, we would have talked about this if we were able to get together as a family still, without the fear, without the anxiety of la llorona, la corona. If we were able to do that, we might learn something together. And if we're able to see past generations and understand some words, they're just needed, they're necessary in some communication circles. And the more you remain silent, the more that dying vine will wither away. And I'm not trying to be an egocentric narcissist by calling these observations out as they are occurring. I'm just saying, I heard the house is on fire. You don't need to tell a guy twice. You said the house is on fire. You don't need to tell me twice. I said it was going to be on fire before it burned. What happened there? Who dropped the ball? Was it me? It could have been me. I'm sure someone will find a way to blame me. But don't forget my efforts that I've put in both before and after the fire. I've been tending to the lawn at the place that burned down, as well as my own yard. I've got help. And we all should have help. We all should have help when we need help. So when someone asks for help, even if they're just acting out like a toddler throwing a tantrum, even if they're 44, 71, 82, doesn't matter. Doesn't matter what age we are. If we're throwing a tantrum, we're looking for something to resolve the situation that's causing us enough discomfort to lash out. That's basically the center of obliterating narcissism, is recognizing others, especially when they're in discomfort. A narcissist can step right over something that's on fire without even urinating on it to slow down the fire. A fair person might go, well, I had to go. I had to take a whiz. And that person was on fire. I've always wanted to do this to them because of the way they treated me. So it's kind of like justice. But thank God I was able to help them in this desert. It's almost like comic humor, some of the things that happen. Some people just don't want to piss on people all the time, though. I don't want to be pissing on anyone. That doesn't make for a great fan base. That doesn't make for more than 200 subscribers. That makes for the most challenging growth on any channel that I've ever heard of, ever. So why am I doing it? Well, I learned it from watching you, Dad. I'm not just going to blame it on you. That was a commercial reference for those who didn't get it. But I'm also going to say I really did. I learned a lot from my dad. There was the biggest learning curve was learning that if we do not communicate, we're going to have some serious problems, people. So I hope you're communicating. I hope that you're clicking on the description, adding some comments, typing something about how joyful you are, how much energy you have now that you learned, that there are people teaching things that you didn't even know existed. I hope that you recognize the brilliance of the opportunity that we have right now to communicate on these levels that we've been able to communicate. The friends that have been made across time who have resolved to never stop communicating with one another. That's how we said it. No matter what happens with anyone else. Till death do us part, we're always going to be friends. Maybe. Maybe some people just don't want to be a part of that stream. Maybe they didn't feel worthy. Everyone is worthy of living in peace. The question is, do we take those actions that get us there, or do we take actions that take us in an opposite direction? When we're rowing against the current, it's very difficult to go anywhere. When we go with the current and accept peace and accept that, oh yeah, you're right. If I had a few of those plants in my yard, I could have eaten some tomatoes today and be set. It's raining outside anyway. I don't want to go for a drive and get some things that come in plastic packaging. I don't. Health is wealth. Wellness and conservation go hand in hand. The right shoulder and the left shoulder, they're part of the same body. Each side can ache independently, but in the long run, when both sides are healthily working together to protect that which is already there, then we have a sound and able working body. The soundness of mind is a whole separate segment. It's a whole separate thing, but it's absolutely what I've been talking about in this particular video right now. And it was all based on watching something about narcissism, and right before that, watching something about people accepting rules, to accept the income level that they were aspiring to receive and what they had to do to earn those dollars in the system that we currently have come to love and accept, that was brought to us by our fathers. You didn't bring it to yourself. You were brought into this situation to help notify others. Some people might call themselves star seeds, star children, light workers. There are a lot of things that we call ourselves. But we're either helping other people right now, or we're just kind of dragging our heels. So I'm making a guitar right now. It's dragon themed. And it's, when I said dragging our heels, I might have come up with a title to a song right there. Dragging our heels. And in fact, I have the Eye of Horus as something in mind that I wanted to use as the logo for the headstock. Heels, healing. Some people might think of all these symbols as, paganism or some other alternative religion or alternative medicine. The fact is that this world was created in beauty, and it also has a very negative corresponding side. Everything results in energies. People talk about it, and some people don't even really have any gratitude for it. And when you have gratitude for it, you can look at things without fearing it. You can look at a narcissist without fearing them and just knowing, hey, it's another person who is in need of further education beyond the education system that our fathers brought to us. So have a great day. Thanks again for watching. Peace, love, and all that old school stuff.